This video is going to go over session variables in PHP, where we store information and we recall it on later pages. We're going to build on the previous assignment, so we're going to just start with those files and then we're going to modify them as necessary. So we'll basically be copying that folder and then using those files as a starting point anyway. What we're going to wind up doing, look at a flow diagram here. It varies from the last assignment in that we're going to add a processing page here. So we're going to start with the exact same beginning page that we had in the last assignment. When we click proceed, it's going to take us through a PHP. You'll never see this one. It won't load in the browser. When it's done processing, it lands here. So to the end user, the person that's navigating the website, it looks like they fill this out, click proceed, and then go here. And they don't realize that there's a page in between. So on this page, this is our third page from the last assignment. We're going to modify it a little bit, add a link to update, which will take us back to index so that we can do it again. And also a link to finish, which will take us to this fourth page to get us out of this looping scenario. So that's what our diagram looks like. You're going to have 4 files: index, store info, display info, and finished update. Let's look at a finished solution. So here we've got the exact same setup. Before I do anything, I'm going to click the button proceed. And it brings me back and displays an error message. So that's one thing that we're going to add in. So if this was empty, we're going to set a session variable. And then when this page reloads, we display that session variable. But then if I type something in there and click proceed, again, we're checking each one of these. So I'm going to type garbage. Now we still have the same scenario, so this should copy over. I'll click proceed. And I land on display info. Now again, it went through a middle page that we didn't see. It did some processing, then it brought us here. And so we've got this layout just like we did last time. We'll go to continue updating, which will let us change it. So let's say that I want to change it. And that is that. And then let's just leave this empty and let it copy once again. So it's going to wind up looking like this. Again, I can go back. It will remember that information and auto-populate that page for me. But when I'm done, I click Finished Updating and I land on this page. So that's our finished solution. Very much like the previous one, and that's our starting point. So first thing we're going to do, I have assignment 3 still on my desktop here. I'm going to do a Control-C, Control-V. And I'm going to make that assignment 4. And I'm going to have assignment 4 open up here. That's my desktop. I'm going to open up another file explorer. Move this one down here. Click on this PC. You can see all my network drives that I have. So I'm going to navigate to my web server folder that I've been using for this. And I'm just going to create a new folder, assignment 4. And now I have my web server space, which is empty, and I have my desktop space, which has these files. Now, something something about these three. We don't need all three of these. The first and the second were the same, except the second one did auto population. So really the second one's probably the one we want to keep. And the first one we don't need. Anything that we have in there that we might need, we'll just rewrite. So this index page I'm going to delete. And then let's look. We have index, store info, display info, and finished update. So because I deleted the original index page, this get form data becomes index.php. This display form data becomes display info.php. And then we'll have to create 2 new files that go there. So then I'm going to open Dreamweaver. I'm going to grab just the index page off of my desktop so that I can start looking at it. A lot of this top material here, actually all of this is going to go into our pass-through page. So you'll recall we took our second page and we're making it our first. So this stuff was at the top of our second page. Let's do a new PHP create. I'll do a Control A delete. And then this part here, let's just take everything from the opening PHP to this closing PHP right above the doc type. Do a Control X. And then on this new page, I'm going to paste it in here. And I'm going to go ahead and do a file save as. And I'm going to put that into my folder on the desktop. Sorry. And this one is going to be storeinfo.php. We have that. Now that's going to make this page act differently. We're going to get error messages because we don't have those local variables. You'll remember on this page, down here at the bottom, we were doing PHP echo name, and name is a local variable. So if I save this and navigate to it, we have some things to fix. And of course, I've got to push it up to the server first. So I'll grab this index page and push that up to the server. And then I will refresh this URL. And you'll see that I've got error messages. And if I want to see the whole error message, I can either highlight and scroll. I can do a right click and view page source. And you'll actually see undefined variable name, undefined variable, on down the line. So we were using those local variables that don't exist anymore. So we've got to fix that. And all this comes with our switching from, we're no longer using the local variables, we're using what's called a session variable. And the session variable is going to keep that data in memory while we are going from page 1 to 2 to 3 to 10 to 20 and back to 1. It'll still be there if we use the session. At the top of all 4 of our pages, we need session_start. So you can see it there. It ends with a semicolon. When we have session_start, that allows us to do a $_session and create whatever variables we want to create. So there I've created a session variable. The name of the variable is foo, and the value of the variable is this garbage text. So once I have this at the top of the page, I can do this anywhere on the page. But each individual page has to have session start for it to work. We don't actually need this made up one, but we do need that session start at the top of the page. Likewise, at the top of that other page that we just created, store info, we need session start, and it needs to go at the top. So we'll do session start on there as well. And as we get to those other two pages, we'll make sure that we put it at the top of those two pages as well. So as we come down through here, we were trying to write out some variables. And instead of writing out echo $name, what we're going to wind up writing out is echo $_session name. And so we'll wind up changing all of these. But first, let's create them. There's one other thing we need to put on here, and that's where the error message is going to go. It's going to go in a div that we will place on the page. So outside of the form, before the script tag, I'm going to put a div, give it an ID of error message, or error MSG, capital M. Open and close the div there. And then inside of that is where I would write my error message out. For writing the error message out, we have to use PHP. So I'm going to do this on multiple lines here, just to make it look a little bit more tidy. I'm going to put an if statement. With my curly brackets there. And inside of that if statement, I'm going to check and see if there is a variable called session error message. So I'm going to use the built-in empty function here. And I'm going to look and see if there is a variable called error message. Now, we're calling a function empty. So if empty returns true, that means there is not a variable. So instead of evaluating that way, we're going to put the inverse operator in front, the not operator. We're going to say if the session variable is not empty, then do an echo. So if this session variable is not empty, then go ahead and write out that session variable. And that's what we're going to have there for our error message. And we're going to have this exact same syntax in all of these up through here as well. Now you're probably asking, why do we need the if statement? The if statement helps on the first page load. So this is the landing page, it's index.php. So the first time a user comes to this page, these session variables will not exist. And so because they don't exist, it will throw an error message, and your page, instead of being nicely formatted, it will be filled with error messages exactly like it currently is right now. So the if statement takes care of that error message, takes care of making sure that there is actually a session variable for us to use. So we've placed this div down here at the bottom. If there is an error message, it will be written inside of that div. Let's come up here to the styles. We need to add one style. I'm going to do div pound error MSG. We're going to give it a color of red. Oops. So pound FF0000. Do a font weight of bold. Font size of 12 point. Position of absolute. Top of 420. Left of 480. So that's going to position it on the screen for us. Now we probably want to check the positioning. So I'm going to come down here and inside of the div tag, but not inside of the PHP, I'm just going to type some garbage temporarily. And I'll hit save. And I'm going to have to push that up to the server. So I'm going to grab my index page and copy it to the server. And then I'm going to refresh this index page in Assign04. So you can see here's our error message and the placement of it. So the placement looks pretty good. And I'm just going to replace that garbage with an asterisk and a space, and that'll just help us identify the error message there, I guess. So before I handle all of these in here, what I'd like to do is go ahead and go to the store info page. So we come up to form, ID equals form 0, name, method is post. The action has to go to storeinfo.php. You can see it, the suggestion popping up there. And then we have name equal value pairs that are submitted. So we'll have city equals whatever was typed, state equals whatever was typed. And on this page, we'll be able to grab those and store them into session variables, not local variables. So we're going to have to alter this page quite a bit. One thing we're going to put at the top is a header statement to help us control our cache. And what we're going to do is just make sure that this page does not get cached so that every time the server knows to execute this page again and again, rather than storing its last iteration in memory and delivering that. So we're going to do cache, capital C-A-C-H-E, dash, control, capital C, colon, space, no dash cache, all lowercase. And what that does is just tell the server, don't cache this page. Always reevaluate this page. Next, we're going to alter this if statement here and actually combine it with what's below, kind of. So we're not going to have the header redirect there. And each of these if statements, it'll be several if statements. You need to have the not operator there. So I've got if not empty, post name. So this is the value from the previous page. This is the value from index.php. If that value is not empty, then let's go ahead and create a session variable called name and store that posted value from index.php. Now, this value right here that I've highlighted is only available on this page, store info, because it is retrieving what was sent to it from the previous page, index. This value will be available on every page. It'll be available on this page, on the next page, on index, on any page that you can create as long as the web browser is open. So we don't have to keep passing it like we've in the last assignment, and in this one right here, we are passing it from the first page to the second. But once we pass it that first time, now we're storing it into memory, into the session. And it will just stay there in the session until the browser is closed. So we have an if statement for each one of these. We're going to have one for name, address, city, state, on through comments. So what we're going to do is duplicate this right here. And then I'm going to change this from name to the next one is address. So we have address in 3 places. And then I'm going to do the next one. The next one is city. So we're just, again, checking to see if the user typed something into that text box. That means it's not empty. Then store the value they typed into the session. After city is state. After state is zip. After the zip, we have the country. Phone. Email. And comments. So now that makes a kind of a long if structure. Notice they are each individual if statements. It is not an if else. So they should be each individual if statements. One does not rely on the other. And you just want to double check, make sure you didn't miss any of the changes there. Now that we have done this part right here for each of these, this section right here we can delete, right? Because it was doing essentially that, but for local variables. And we didn't have all the if statements. So after that, we're going to have a general check to see if any of them were left empty. And if any of them are left empty, we're going to create a session error message that will display on the previous, on index.php, and that red text that we made. So here we will we'll do an if statement, and it'll be kind of a large if statement. It's going to be similar to what was above, in that we're checking all of those posts. So I'm going to go up here and grab the first one, and I'm going to grab the empty statement. I'm going to paste it here. Notice I do not have the exclamation point on this if statement. I do want to know if it is empty. So there's no exclamation point there. But I want to do it for all of those, and there are 9 of them. So I'm going to do a double pipe, which is a logical OR, and I'm going to paste it again. So I'm going to say, so if the posted name is empty, or the posted address is empty, double pipe, or the posted city is empty, double pipe, state is empty, zip, country, email. Or comments. And there again, we're just going to quickly go through there backwards and make sure we changed all of them. So we've got comments, double pipe, email, double pipe, phone. And so that's a long evaluation that's there. But if any one of those are true, we want the user to be forced to go and fill it back out. So what we're going to do here is create a session variable the same as what we put on that last page. So it is session error message, and we are going to set it equal to some value. So I use the empty string there, the double quotes, and I'm going to put please fill out all of the required form elements. So that will get displayed when it goes back to the other page. It will only be displayed because I stored it into the session variable, and on the other page I am echoing out the session variable. After this, we'll do a header location redirect. And then I'll use the PHP exit statement to ensure that we stop processing at that point. So now we've got a nice check. If any of these were filled out, we will have stored them into the session. So that's great. They won't have to retype those. But if one of them is empty, then they are going to have to fill that in. We'll go ahead and finish out this bottom part and change it over before we start showing how this error message plugs in. Now we're going to use this same technique here. We could go further. We could check every one of those shipping name, shipping address, and all that. But we're just going to stick with the shipping name for this example. And what we are going to do is change these over from, instead of local variables, they need to be session variables. So on the left, it needs to be underscore session sname, and on the right, it needs to be underscore session name. So what I'm going to do is just fix the first one and then do some copying and pasting to make them all look like session variables. So I'll do underscore session, square bracket, double quote, square bracket, and then on the right hand side, underscore session, square bracket, double quote, square bracket. And so that's how we're going to change it. So each one of those, instead of being local variables that can only be used on this one page, they will be session variables that can be used on all the pages. So let's do that one more time. Underscore session, square bracket, double quote, square bracket, and then we'll do underscore session, square bracket, double quote, square bracket. And so you can see on the left hand side we've got sname and saddress, and on the right hand side we have name and address. And now what I'm going to do is copy and paste to make it go a little faster. So I'm going to grab the underscore through the double quote there. And then I'm going to grab the double quote square bracket there at the end. That's a lot of copying and pasting, so just make sure you've got your semicolon on the end. Make sure your color coding is correct. That should help you make sure that you haven't made an error there in copying and pasting. Now at the bottom we have something similar. On the right hand side we're keeping this, the underscore post, that stays the same because they did fill out the shipping information, so the underscore post stays the same. But these here need to become the underscore session. So we'll do the first one, do underscore session, square bracket, double quote, and then double quote, square bracket. And so we're going to change each of them to look like that and leave the underscore post on the right hand side. So I'm going to copy and paste here. And then just give it a quick look over and make sure that you haven't missed anything. Now this is a processing page, so we're just passing through this page. So if we get through this page successfully, the last thing we should do is redirect to another page. So I need a header redirect at the bottom, location, and this one's going to take us to display info.php. So assuming everything's all right, we make it through this page, do all the processing, we leave this page and we land on display info.php. So let's save that one. This page is done, but we'll probably come back and look at the code again. Let's go ahead and look at how this error message is handled between the pages. So we've got on the page we just left, if any of those are empty, it's going to set a session error message for us. So it will not be empty, and then we will write it out on the screen, and then we saw where it would be displayed. Now, one of our biggest issue right now is that on this page, our errors from our local variables are being written into the text boxes. So if I hit proceed here, it's going to send all of this. Nothing's going to be empty. It all has data, and it's going to act like it should just go on through. And so that's not going to work for us. So let's go ahead and fix that error. The good news is what we need to do is this same thing that we did for the error message. We need that same statement for every one of those value equals up above. But what we're going to do is collapse it down into one line instead of 4 lines. That way it stays in line with what we have up here. So let's start with the top one. I'm going to come over here where this PHP is, and I'm going to start by breaking this out. We'll make it in 4 or 6 separate lines, and then I will back it back down into a single line. So we're going to do the same thing that we did down below. So there we have our opening and closing PHP statements. Now I have made that value equals spread way too far. But what we need is an if statement here. We need the same if statement. And we are looking to see that the session variable for name is not empty. If it is not empty, well then we want to echo out that session variable. But this is not the session variable, so we've got to change that. So that gets rid of our local variable, changes it to our session variable. Again, I'm going to try to hammer it home. The local variable is only available on the one page. You go to the next page and that local variable is gone. The session variable is available on every page after it's been stored. So it will remain in memory until you need to use it again, until the browser is closed, at which time everything will be lost. or until there's a session timeout, which is typically about 15 minutes. And that data will disappear. So now what I've got is this if statement. If not empty session variable, then echo out the session variable. Open and close curly brackets, got my semicolon there for the statement. But now what we want to do is make this one line. So I'm going to delete a lot of the white space. And just kind of turn this into, there's my open and close curly brackets. There's the open and close, and I've got the full echo statement with a semicolon there. And now I'm going to put that onto the same line as the if there. So now I've got my if, open and close parentheses, and then my open and close curly brackets. Now I've got my open PHP to my close PHP. But now let's just go ahead and get that all on the same line. I scroll out here. You'll see its value equals. Here's the opening double quote. Here's the closing double quote. And it's got the open PHP and close PHP right inside of it. And it's got that full if statement. So what we need to do is replace all of these with this. And I think the easiest thing to do is let's just replace the whole thing, and we'll rewrite the variable names. So we'll start here at the opening PHP, the closing PHP. You'll see there's a double quote on either side of it. I'm going to copy that. And that value equals in between the two double quotes. I'm going to paste. And I'm going to do that on down through there. So double quote to double quote. I'm just going to fill it in with my if statement and echo instead of having just the echo. Again, here on the text area, you'll remember that the value of the text area goes in between the open and close tags. There is not a value equals for a text area. So I paste it in between the open and close text area tags. Get these ones down here at the bottom. So now we've got that if statement throughout there, but we've got to alter it because they all say name. So as we go down through there, we'll change this second one to address, city, state, and so on. So we'll move down through there to make those changes. My scrolling can stop doing that. Next is city in 2 places. Next is state in 2 places. Next is zip in 2 places. Country. Phone. Email. Now we move down through here, and these are going to have the capital S's, right? So this first one is S name with capital S. So we'll make those 2 S name, and then it's S address. Zip. Get these last couple. And then S country. So now, for each one of these, for billing and shipping, we are checking to make sure that that session variable does actually exist and it's not empty. And if it is not empty, then we can echo it out. If we leave off the if statement, we'll have error messages that fill it up just like this. So you have to have the if statement. Now that we've done all of that, we're going to save this file and we're going to push up index and store info. Looks like my folders got resized there. So I'm going to push up these two files. Let's come back to the web browser. I'm on my Assign04 index page. Let's refresh that. Everything goes away because I have my if statements. I've just noticed, I should have noticed this at the beginning, but let's change that get form data to index. So I'm going to come here to the index page, and there where it says lab 3, I'll make it say index page, and up here in the title the same thing. And I'll have to push that up again. So let's refresh that page again. There we've got our index page. Now I've noticed I told us to put the asterisk there in between the open and closed div tags, and it's displaying no matter what. That'll probably bug some of you. It bugs me. So let's change that. Instead of having it on the index page in between the open and closed div tags there, let's just delete that out. And if you want an asterisk, come over to the store info page, and where session error message is equal to, just put an asterisk space in front of the please inside of the double quotes and save that file. And then we'll grab both of those files and we'll push them up once again. And refresh this page on the web server, and so that's gone now. Now what we want to do is check our error message. So if I leave any of these blank, I should get an error message here. So I hit proceed, and I do. So let's trace that. Let's actually see the code. So I'm on index. Index loads here. Everything is empty. I click the proceed button. The proceed button goes to store info. I come over here to store info. I start my session. I check all of these and I see if there's anything there that I can store into a session variable. In this case, there's not. And then on this if statement, it checks, are any of these empty? And they all are. So if any one of them were, then I'm going to set this session variable error message equal to this value. And that value is going to stay in memory. I'm not passing it, I'm just storing it into memory. And then I say redirect back to the index page. So the index page loads again. Again, everything is still blank. But this time when it loads, we come down here to the div. And we check and see if session error message is empty. And it is not empty, it contains information. So we write out session error message, which displays right here. So they would trace that through. Now, we need our third page that we're going to land on, which is display info. When we come to this page, again up at the start, we're going to have session start. Without session start, we won't have access to those session variables. So if you are trying to use a session variable and you're getting an error message, you know the session variable's there. Maybe you forgot to put session start at the top of the page. That's something to check. Now, display info does not, there's not a page that's passing data to this. So underscore post is not going to work here. So what is going to work? Underscore session. So we are going to check and see if underscore session name is empty. If you land on display info now, if we come back to our flow diagram here, if you land on display info now, all of the sessions should be filled, all the sessions that you're using. So the only way to get to display info is through this pass-through, which should fill that session variable. And if it's empty, this pass-through will bring us back to the index page. So what we have, we look for session name. If it does not exist, let's just shoot them back to the index page there and force them to fill out that information. Now, if we land on this page successfully, then there should not be an error. So what we're going to do is clear the error message out. And by doing session error message equals the empty string, or double quote, double quote. And then after that, we can start our page down below. So we'll go ahead and change this to display info. And then again down here in the H1. And as we scroll down here, you'll notice once again the underscore posts. So we're not going to be able to use the underscore posts because the previous page did not have a form that sent us data. Instead, what we have is session variables that are stored in memory that we can access on any page. So the underscore posts are going to turn into underscore sessions. So they're all going to change to be like this. We'll leave the same layout here, but I'm just going to change. I'm going to highlight each of these posts. You could probably use a find and replace if you want. Sometimes find and replace can get you into trouble if you don't pay close enough attention to there might be some that you don't want to replace. So just be careful when you're doing it. So now I've got underscore session throughout all of these. And again, we checked up here to see if name was empty. The only way we should land on this page is by having our session variables be full. That's the only way to successfully get here. So you might be asking, well, do we need the if statement on this page? Do we need to check and see if the session variable is empty? It would not hurt anything. You could certainly put it there, but because of where this page is in the flow diagram, you don't need it. The only way to get to this page is by store info, making sure that all of the variables do in fact have data. So it won't hurt anything to put the if statement there, but you don't have to have the if statement there. Now, this page also needs a couple of links on it. We're going to put them down here outside the field set. And I'll do div ID of nav, open and close the div. And I'll put a span with an ID of nav1. And then a span, oops, let me close that span, a new span with an ID of nav2. And I'll close that span. And then inside of there, I'm going to have my links. So inside of that first one, open and close span, I'm going to do an anchor tag with an href that points to index.php. I'll close that anchor tag, and the value between there is going to be continue updating. And then between this second open and close span for id equal nav2, I'm going to have another anchor tag with an href, but that one's going to go to finished update.php. I'll close that anchor tag, and then the text that you'll click on will be finished updating. So there you've got your, here's our first anchor tag that is properly nested in between an open and close span tag. And here's our second anchor tag. Oops. That is properly nested between an open and closed span tag, all of which is nested inside of a div tag. So now let's come up here into the styles, and we'll add a couple of styles is all. I'm going to do div pound nav. That's our outside container there, the div that we created. A width of 400. Position absolute. Top of 330. And left of 200. Next, I'm going to do the span that is inside the div that has the ID nav1. For this, I'm going to float left. Next, I'm going to do the span that is inside the div that has the ID nav2. And I'm going to float right. And so I've added those three pieces of CSS there. I'm going to save that. Display info should be done for us. I need to push it up to the web server. So I'm going to grab it, push it up. Come back to the web browser. I'm going to refresh this index page. And again, I'm going to have to fill it out in order to get to the next page. And in this case, I'm going to fill that out. I'm going to leave this blank so that it'll copy over. I'll hit proceed. I pass through store info and I land on display info. And I see that when we made our change last time, we should have changed it to lab 4, so we'll do that. Here we have all of our information listed just like before, so you can tell it's pulling it from the underscore session. That's where it's getting it to write it out here. And now here's the big thing. When I click continue updating, it will take me to index.php, and index.php will auto-populate with what was typed in the first time around. One of the biggest things in web development is that you do not want to make the user type things that they don't have to. So if they've already typed this information at some point, you should populate it into the form for them. Do not make the user type. The more you make the user type, the more prone to errors you are. So this makes it more user friendly for the end user, and it's just it's a rule we've followed for a long time. So hit proceed. It'll take you back to display info, and you can make changes. And now we've got Lafayette, Indiana over here, West Lafayette. The reason the one on the right didn't change was because it was auto-populated the last time here and we didn't change it. So you can go back and forth and the session variables will hold that data. And then we have this finished updating that we have to do. So let's come back here. And first on display info, let's change this to lab 4 and 4, and we'll save that. Let's go to index, change that to lab 4, 4, save that. And then we've got to have this last page that's called finished updating. And for that, we're just going to create a new page. So let's go to File, New, PHP, HTML5, Create. We've got our base layout here. Correct Dreamweaver's stuff there. So for this page, the first thing we want to do once again is open our PHP. Do a session start. And we want to clear the session variables. And we're going to have a couple of techniques here. The first is we're manually going to clear out the ones that we know we used. And you might have a site that's so big that you forget, you forget a couple that you've used in a certain spot that's not used throughout. It's understandable, and that's why we do what we do at the end. But for right now, we'll do session name equals the empty string, semicolon. And what we're going to do is for every one of the session variables that we used, we're going to set it equal to the empty string. So I'm going to paste a few of them. We had address, we had city, state, zip, country, phone, email, and we had more than that. We had comments and then name, address, city, state, zip, country, and error message. So comments, capital S name, S address, city, state, spell that right. And then we have that error message there at the end. This right here, I don't like. I always like to line up my equal signs so that I can read vertically in addition to horizontally. Now I know there's no error messages showing up on the screen. Dreamweaver hasn't highlighted anything, but this is just a coding practice that I learned in my CS classes, and it's just a habit I've gotten into, and I like it. So now I can look up and down very quickly and see that these are all exactly the same after the equal sign. So I can read vertically in addition to horizontally. So I've got all of my S name, S address, and so on, and I've got all of the others. They're all set equal to the empty string. That's going to clear out those session variables. And after that, I want to abandon the session as well, just to make sure. Now, do you always have to do both of these? No, of course not. But this is an exercise showing you and introducing you to session variables and abandoning the session. So we will first use session underscore unset semicolon. And this one is used to free all session variables. You can look in the PHP manual, find out more about it if you want. The next one we'll do is underscore destroy. That one destroys all data associated with the current session. So all of that will clear out your session so that you don't have any data floating around there that could maybe accidentally find its way into a different page if a user navigates from your site to another site that by some freak of nature has the same session variables that you have. It's actually not that hard to do if it's something as common as what we're using right here with address and such. So the title on this, we'll go ahead and put in Lab 4. And this is the finished update page. On this page, we'll have an H1 for accessibility. In here, we will put Lab 4. Finished update page, and I'll go ahead and set a style. We'll go ahead and put some styles in here. I'll set font size to 14 point and the text indent to 360 pixels. Lastly, after that H1, I'll put in a paragraph tag, open and close paragraph, and a brief message. The information has been successfully updated in our database. And that'll be all for that page. So I'll go ahead and save that. Again, we'll save it to the desktop here as display info, or no, sorry, finished update. Save that. We'll make sure that this matches on display info at the very bottom. Finished update.php. I named it the same, finished update.php. That's good. I'm just going to grab them all. And we'll come out here, we'll go back to the index page, refresh this page. I could do a hard refresh and clear this out, but we don't really need to. We'll hit proceed. Again, it comes and displays this. Continue updating, we'll come back here. If I delete one of these values, hit proceed, my error message kicks in and comes back. That value was stored in the session variable from before, so it's still there and it auto-populated when it came back. When I'm done, I go to finished updating and it comes here. Once I have come here, if I come back to the URL and type in index.php and hit enter, this should be empty because we emptied the session. We just finished typing all that code. We emptied out the session. So all that data is gone. So you'd have to retype it again. And that completes our Lab 4 assignment on session variables, storing session information, and reusing it on separate pages. And again, that session information will be available throughout the user's duration, throughout the user's visit to that website. But really more than that, as long as the browser is open, it'll still be there. So they could go to another website and come back and it'll still be there. So when the browser is closed, it's gone. And then there's also a timeout. So after about 15 minutes of inactivity, it'll also go away.